Welcome back to another episode of What Are You Made Of with your boy, Mike C-Roc, the unstoppable Mike C-Roc. Guys, listen, I want to thank you for coming to today to listen, for the support that you've had for my show. And, I also want to encourage you to be unstoppable. And you could do that by buying my book, Rocket Fuel, Convert Setbacks, Become Unstoppable. The foreword was written by 10X man himself, Grant Cardone, talks about the effect of the rocket fuel law in his life and how he doesn't let anything stop him either. But it's very important you understand this proactively so that you can become unstoppable in your life and handle setbacks, disappointments, letdowns, and screw-ups that we all go through. So thank you for coming on today and listen to the show. Again, thank you for your support. I want to start today's show off by introducing my friend, Mike Morawski. I met this gentleman, I think, through social media. I don't remember half the time because I'm reaching out. I overdo the reach outs, guys. Like I make connections everywhere. And it's a good thing not to know where you met someone because it means you're doing enough. So I just want to encourage everybody with this. But I brought Mike on today to share a story because it's a absolutely crazy story, phenomenal story, but it's one of lessons learned and converting into rocket fuel. So Mike was a contractor, real estate agent. Then he got into the equity world, right? And I'm going to let him get into this more, but basically got into a tough situation when 2008 did, like a lot of people. And I'll let Mike answer this, but whether it was not knowing something, lack of information, or poor decisions, whatever it was, he ended up in prison for a long time. And then he learned something in prison, came out, and he's trying to make an impact now. And I want him to share this with him or with you guys and find out more about this. So we're going to dig into this. But before we do that, Mike, first of all, welcome to the show.
Hey, C-Roc, thanks for having me, man. And I've just been so excited about doing this with you. So I'm grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. For somebody to tell me that they're excited to come hang with me, it means a lot. So thank you. We always start the show. We have a tradition here of asking the question, what are you made of?
I love that question because it really makes you have to think about who you are. And one question I always ask people on my show is, tell me in one word who you are personally and professionally. And now that I'm thinking about your question, I don't know that one word's enough, right? Because I have to think about the work ethic that I learned growing up, and I have to think about the tenacity that I have as an individual. Because after the experiences and things that I've been through in my life, to have tenacity, to rebound, the resilience to come back and have restoration and redemption in my life is because of the tenacity. I say that, somebody said to me one time, I was on a listing appointment. I was a pretty new real estate agent. And they said, man, Morawski, you are so tenacious. And I said, oh, very graciously, C-Roc. I go, hey, thanks. I appreciate that. And they go, and I run home and I grab the dictionary because I had no idea what the hell it meant. Right. And I look it up and I'm like, oh, that means, that I never give up. Right. And I said, that's me. That's who I am. So, I had an old saying when I was in the real estate business that they either listed with me or they died because I just followed up with them over and over. And I think that's how we have to look at the sales business. That's how we have to look at the business if we're trying to get a seller off market deal, talk to investors, whatever the case may be. We have to have that attitude, and it happens with work ethic too. So.
Yeah, I love that. So let's get back into your story then. I mean, you started off back in the day as a general contractor, moved into real estate, as you just mentioned. You talked about that. And when you get into the private equity, what led you, first of all, to get into the private equity side of things?
Yeah, well, I think that one thing is success always leaves clues. And it's been my philosophy and how I always look at things. So I was in the construction business, woke up one morning and I was just burned out. I actually told my wife at the time, I said, hey, I can't do this anymore. So I sold the company, took a year off, tried to decide what I wanted to do. Over that time, I did a couple of fix and flips. We actually house hacked a couple of 2 flats long before it was sexy and the thing to do, right? So I met a real estate agent along the way who was really successful. And I went to him and I said, hey, listen, I think I'm going to go in the real estate business. He said, I think you'd be great at it. I said, can I shadow you? Can I follow you? Because I always knew success left clues. He goes, no, I'll do better than that. I'm going to make you a cassette tape Now I'm dating myself. Some people might not even know what that is, right? But it's like a podcast today. And I listen to that thing over and over and over again. My first 8 months in the business, I sold 78 houses because I followed some simple processes, some simple techniques, built a team selling 125 homes a year. 2005, the market starts to shift. Now, when the market starts to soften, I go, I'm going to have to do something else. So I go and decide I want to go in the apartment business. And the reason for that was when I was in the construction business, I did a lot of work for a big apartment syndicator who today is the largest REIT in the world. And I understood the private equity world. So I knew that if you raise private equity, you married it with a good real estate deal, as long as everything.
Hold on. Let me just clarify for my audience, because not everybody, they hear private equity sometimes. What specifically is private equity?
Hey, it'd be just like if I came to you, C-Roc, and I said, hey, I'm going to buy 123 Apple Street. I'm looking to put together some investors who want to be part of that. We're going to syndicate it. These are all terms that get used, right? Would you like to invest in that piece of real estate? So now you, as a private investor, own a share of that real estate where you get a return on it monthly, quarterly, and then when we sell it, you get a portion of the profit.
So that's what like Grant's doing with Cardone Capital, for example.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Cardone Capital is a private equity firm.
Okay. Right.
Is that what it is? It's like when you're the person that goes and finds investors and puts it all together.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
That's a syndicate is a group of people investing into a property.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Correct.
Just want to clarify that for the audience.
So like if I put it together, I'm considered the sponsor.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Yep.
So I understood that model, and I said, well, let me go into the apartment business. So 2005, I syndicated my first apartment deal. I put a little ad in the newspaper that said real estate investors wanted, and my phone rang off the hook. I raised $200,000, and I said, man, this is going to be great. From there, I raised $18 million in 30 months. I bought $60 million worth of real estate. It was about 4,000 apartments in that period of time in 5 different states. Went on to build a property management company managing about 7,500 units.
And so that was back in what year was that?
That was between 2005 and 2010.
Okay. So then when 2008 happened, how did that affect what you were doing with the apartments and the ones you already had under contract, like you owned?
Yeah.
And, because here's the thing, I wasn't aware of what happened in the rental market. I knew I was in the mortgage business. I was in real estate. I understood that part. Okay. But what happened in the rental business?
Yeah.
How did it affect it?
So it depended on what market you were in. I was in markets that were driven by the car manufacturing industry. And because of the car manufacturing industry getting hit so bad, occupancies dropped. So, I had bought a property one time in a little town in Indiana. It was kind of a tertiary market. And I bought this property. And when I bought it, it was rated the #1 city in the country to raise a family in. And it was just on a total upswing. Within 9 months, it was bottom of the list. Okay. All the businesses in town made little parts for the car industry. So they made like the knobs for the radios and dashboards and the beading on the seats and the foam and the springs. They all went out of business because the car manufacturer said, whoa, we're not selling cars anymore. So as a result of that, people moved out. I had a property manager call me one morning and say, crying in tears, she goes, I have 32 moving trucks in the parking lot and I don't have a scheduled move out for 45 days. She said, what do you do when that happens? So that happened in a good portion of my properties along the way. Now, part of the other issues that I had were I bought too many properties way too fast. I was I was not stabilized. I was like a 3-legged chair and going to crumble at any time.
What was the leverage did you have a leverage rule?
Yeah. So my leverage was bad, right? I was 85% average loan to value. So I was only putting 10 to 15% down on $1 million deals. And I would never advise anybody to do that, but they were throwing money at you at that time. Mm-hmm. And the market was totally going up, right?
Yeah.
So I was way over leveraged. I paid too much for a lot of properties. I bought properties. We didn't stabilize them. I closed 2,700 units in 2007. It was 17 deals. You you,
And so what is the rule of thumb now that you learned your lesson there for leverage?
yeah. So
65?
yeah, I would do 65 to 70% LTV.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you're putting down
Loan to
35 to
value.
40, 35 to 30% on a deal. And I would make sure that I was definitely buying under value. And, there are a number of things along the way, but
So when that happened, what did your occupancy percentages go to?
okay, great question, because I was buying stuff that was mid to upper 70s value add that we could go in, rehab, renovate, re-engineer. We were driving values up into the low 90s. So when 2008 happened, I wasn't affected right away. So that foreclosure business really kind of pushed people into the apartment
That's what I
business.
was thinking. Yeah. Wait a minute. So
So
when you said 90, you're talking about occupancy rate, right?
right,
Yeah.
right.
And you did that by renovating the properties and making them nicer so that it'd be more attractive. But didn't rents go up as well when you did that?
Yes. So
Okay.
rents went up and
But that still brought more occupancy, even though the rents
yes,
went up? Okay.
right, because you could re-engineer those properties by putting new tenants in, and so
Mhm.
we those we got those occupancies up 92. I had an average occupancy on 4,000 units at 92%. In 2009, the market in the commercial side started to slide out. And as that happened, my occupancies dropped way down into the high 70s, low 80s again, which there's a rule of thumb in the multifamily space that if you're at about 87% occupied, that you're going to break even and even make money. If you are above 87%, you'll be on the profit side.
Yeah. So
So
that's your
we
cash
went
flow side, 87 or above.
right.
Still to this day, is that the same? I guess it
Yeah,
doesn't change
I
really,
think
right?
it's pretty close. I'm back starting to underwrite some deals again, and it looks like those numbers might shake out again a little bit. But I haven't, I'm not 100% confident on that. That's how it was when we were doing it before, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. And then you went in there, and then when your occupancy started to drop, where did you make the mistake?
So what happened was my occupancy started to drop. I had some properties that that went into foreclosure because we couldn't pay the bills on them. And, I'm the kind of guy, Mike, I don't like to have bad news or come to you with bad news and tell you that I screwed up or that the market screwed up. And none of it was my fault in the beginning, right? It was the market conditions. People moved out. We couldn't do anything as re-engineering them. So I started to move money between companies. Now I went to my outside legal counsel and my accountant, and they said, "Oh yeah, you can do that. Just leave notes between the companies." So I started moving money from good companies that were profitable into bad companies. And that wasn't the problem. The problem was that I didn't tell anybody. So because I didn't tell my investors, it was a non-disclosure issue. And I wound up being charged with wire fraud and mail fraud charges, which kind of covered the non-disclosure piece in there. But, it's funny because, my life never changed. I mean, never went and bought bigger cars or bigger houses or anything like that because I knew what the end result would be if I plowed all the money back into the business and grew the business. So we bought all those apartments, but we were just unstable. And so go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm just wondering what went through your head at all. Like, was there any malintent now that you're out now, but like, was there any malintent at all? Like, did you know that you should have disclosed at the time and you just
I,
didn't, or you
I,
didn't know?
I didn't know that I
Yeah.
should have disclosed. And it wasn't, there was a time towards the end that I did realize, I should have told my investors this. Uh, uh, but it wasn't, it was, hey, I want to save this. I want to right the ship. And I thought that by moving money back and forth, and here's really what I thought was, hey, I've never seen a real estate market slide more than 10%. And it's always come back 17, 18 months. Those recessions are typically over. Nobody ever expected this thing to falter 40% or be, upside down for 8 years. So
Yep.
I always thought, well, it'll come back and I'll be able to fix everything. We close a couple more deals, we'll bring some more capital in, things will be back on track. And it didn't happen that way.
And so when you went to foreclosure, the investors are just they have the piece of it. All of them have a piece of it. Their money's in tied in, right? And
Yeah,
if the place goes to foreclosure, they lose all their money basically. That's the risk of
correct.
investing, right?
Right. And I didn't want my investors to get hurt. My
Yeah.
whole goal was, my mission of my company was to make a positive financial impact in people's lives. And what was going on in the marketplace was certainly not a positive impact. And I
Yeah.
thought I could save the company. I thought I could save my investors.
And so could you have in that situation gone to them and said, "Hey, we need more capital," or did you do that and say, "Hey, here's what we're going to need to do to save this"?
Hey, that's funny you asked because one of the things I took pride in was that I wrote in my offering documents that if we needed capital, we would never come back for a capital call to our investors. So my hands were tied. I couldn't go back to my investors. I probably could have, but because of the way I wrote the offering documents, I didn't. Because of my own uh, shame and feeling bad that things were screwed up here, I didn't go back to them. So those are the reasons. It was kind of self-preservation because I didn't want to look bad and
Right.
I didn't want to feel bad,
And if
you
you
know.
simply would have disclosed what you were doing, it would have avoided all the jail time and legal trouble.
I think that if I would have went to my investors and said, "Hey, look, I think that we can save this ship if by doing this," my investors would have signed off on it and we'd have been okay. But because of that, because of not disclosing it, I got in trouble.
And would you have had to go on foreclosure in that situation if you would have disclosed it? And do you think it would have made a difference?
Yeah, there would have been a few deals that would have went to foreclosure, but I think for the most part, the healthy ones, the good ones, we would have kept going. We listen, like anything else, we bought some dogs, but we bought some really good properties too. And the really good ones were operating really well, and the
Right.
dogs weren't.
Right. So talk about before we get into what you're doing now, 10 years in prison. Now, did you plead and get that 10 years or how did that work?
Yeah. It's funny because the government was actually trying for 222 months and I pled, which is kind of ridiculous. And what had happened was and I don't really ever talk about this, but my ex-partner went and testified at the grand jury and crafted a deal to get less time and that I would get more. And I got 10 years and he got 7. And he went with our in-house legal counsel and our director of finance, crafting a deal that they wouldn't get charged with anything. And so, listen, one thing I've always known as a CEO of a company, as an owner of a company, you take responsibility for everything. And I took responsibility. I said, these are my actions. And so I got charged. I wound up being sentenced to 120 months. And it's funny, you stand in court and the judge goes 120 months and you go, holy crap, that's 10 years. And so, you know, I, I I had from that day forward, I had about 90 days to prepare myself to go to prison. And during that time, I did a number of things to set my wife up and my kids up so that they would be okay while I was gone. Um, when I went to prison, I thought this is the worst it could ever get. And when I got there, my wife decided that she was going to leave me and divorced me. And my life went off the skids for the next couple of years. It was really hard to deal with every day because the total loss of everything. You go from making millions to all of a sudden living out of a 2x5 locker with 3 green outfits and 5 pairs of underpants. Your life changes a little bit. And as dark as it is, and as bad as it is, and scary of a place it can be, something happens where you have a choice to either do the time or let the time do you. And I walked in the gym one day, and this guy said to me, he goes, "Hey, don't let these people beat you, man." He goes, "All they want to do is take everything from you. They can take what you have physically, but they can't take what you have inside." This goes back to your question of what are you made of? And he said, "Look, what they can't take from you is they can't take who you are, how you built everything you built and what you've done in your past. He goes, you can go back and do this again. He goes, but you got to get through this first. And he encouraged me to come to the gym every day. He said, come take my class every day. I was 30 pounds overweight. I started losing weight. I started feeling better about myself. I started to read more. I read 400 books in 7 years, which is just added to the books I read before that. I went to college. I got a bachelor's degree in theology. I wrote a book called Exit Plan and a home study course that I taught in prison for 5 years. I wrote a property management book and course. I wrote an ethics course that I taught Bible study. I was on an outreach program. I went into the community, told my story to hopefully make an impact for small business owners and CEOs of companies in the area. I just had a paper published that I co-authored with a professor from the University of Minnesota in the Business Journal of Ethics. I came out, C-Roc, in better shape physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally than I'd ever been. And today we're working on that financial piece, but it made a real big difference in my life.
So when you got out and that day came, now, by the way, did they shorten your time at all, or you had to serve the full thing?
Yeah. So it's interesting. In the federal system, you do 85% of the time, and then you get some time on home confinement. Plus, there's a program that's an alcohol, drug, criminal thinking behavioral program that I took that gave another year off. So I actually served between what I served in prison and on home confinement about 7 years and 10 months.
Gotcha. Okay. And so when you got out and the day came when you were getting out, like what is that like? As far as and preparing yourself and planning and because you've been institutionalized for so many years.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So the thing that I still deal with today, and I've just been home a year. The thing that I still deal with today is crowds. If I go to a store and I don't know where things are and there's a lot of people, I have to leave. I can't. It's just one of those things. I mean, you're with the same. When I first got to the prison I was at, there was about 900 men there. And you kind of get to know everybody and people start to trust you and you kind of fit in. And when I went home, that population had dropped to about 400. But what's interesting is you see the same people every day. You say hi to the same people a couple times every day. Yep. You hang with the same people every day. So when you go home, now it's a whole totally different world, especially when you go home and there's, not a lot to go home to, right? So
yeah. I mean, and you got to start basically building relationships again.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Which I've done. And, I love what you said early on about, hey, you're not sure where we met, but I think we did meet on LinkedIn originally and then on Clubhouse. And so, but the social media stuff, and you're right. I outreach to people all the time. I'm a big networker. I love to network and talk to people and see what people do and what makes them tick. And so.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're able to do that. So now what is your mission now that you're out?
Yeah, I'm in the coaching and training space. And my mission today is to teach multifamily investors and industry professionals how to scale their business, how to do more business and live a balanced lifestyle. My big message is, though, that if, and I really believe, Mike, that there's a lot of CEOs, company owners, men and women who are middle management, leading teams that are faced with stress, faced with tough decisions and choices. How do you mitigate those? So if I can bring a message to pay attention, to think things through, to really look at what you're doing a little bit clearly before you make those next moves, because it's one thing that could change your life, right? Your life can drastically change forever in an instant. So I want people to think that through. I want people to be able to think about that. And I think when I tell a story, about the whole journey that is, is compelling for people to go, man, because I made millions. I lived a great life. I didn't fly private. I didn't have big summer homes and boats and stuff like that, but I lived a great life. And, you lose it, and then you lose your family and people around you, and you go, man, what happened? So.
Yeah, no, it really, it hits home, man. I mean, I try to make decisions. I do make decisions that lead to where I want to go. I have a very simple filter. It's either you do good things happen. You do bad things happen. My stepfather taught me that when I was 11. He stepped in my life and became my father, George. And he used to tell me that all the time. Like, hey, do good things happen. Do bad things happen. But that's a filter that you can live by. And sometimes there's a decision that you have to make that has a gray area, and to get someone legally to give you legal advice to protect you is always better. If it costs you money, tough, but doing the right thing. I mean, millions of things going through my head of what you dealt with, man.
Even some of that though, C-Roc, is not right. I mean, my attorney and accountant said, you can move money back and forth. That's fine. Just leave a trail of paperwork. Nobody ever said, hey, go tell your investors. Nobody ever said, go have your investors sign off. So, everybody learns by somebody's mistake around them. Just, you try not to make, listen, we're all going to stub our toe. We're all going to fall in business. It's how we get up afterwards, right? Like that kid said to me in the gym that day, I could just let those people beat me. But there's a lot of people out there that think you're not going to go back and do it again.
Yep.
The success part, right?
Right.
So they want to hold you back. I'm not looking for that.
So what do you do every day when you wake up in the morning now to make sure that you don't like sit back and not throw, I don't want to say throw in the towel, because you're not going to throw in the towel, but to make sure you're going after your purpose at your age where you are, after you just spent 7 years of your life in confinement or at home? What do you do every single day to make sure you're up and running and ready to go?
So great question. First thing I do is I hit the floor, and, I spend some time with the Lord, and I get right there, because I have to be right there in my heart, in my head, before I do anything else. Then I go to the gym, and I still work on that physical piece. Then I get real intentional about what I'm going to do. What do I want to accomplish today? Who do I want to reach out to? Who do I want to talk to? What's my day going to consist of? And, I have coaching clients that I'm working with, and people that I'm helping build their business and helping them scale. We're getting back in the game. A couple of us are syndicating deals again. So I'm starting to underwrite things. So I'm real intentional about growing again, building a business, building a company, and moving forward.
Love it. All right. So final question, by the way, thank you for being on here today. How can my audience get in touch with you, by the way, before I ask your final question?
Thanks. And one thing I'd like to say is, if anybody wants to read the book I wrote, it's called Exit Plan.
Yeah. Exit Plan.
Complete guide to multifamily investing and why you need an exit plan before you buy. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on coaching and training over the years. People teach us how to get in the business. Great teachers, great coaches, teach us how to get in the business. But I always left feeling like, how do I get out? What's the exit? So I wanted to talk to people about that. So you can go to my website at mycoreintentions.com/exit plan and download a free ebook for yourself. If you're like me and you like to highlight and read dog ear and write in the margins, you'll have to buy one. But you can download a free ebook. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at mycoreintentions.com. Like I said, I'm a huge networker. Anybody wants to connect or talk, just dial me up, DM me.
Yeah, because when you start the business, you got to do some strategic thinking and think about what's the worst case scenario and how do we respond in that time?
Right.
Like, what are we going to do so that when that happens, you're ready to go?
Yeah.
Right. Like 2008 happens. Okay. What's the right thing to do? And what are we going to do and make sure that we cover all of our bases? Yeah. I love that. And I'm going to take that to heart myself as well, because my company now, we're growing some companies, and I want to start thinking strategically about best case, worst case scenario. How do we respond? What are we going to do? I love that, man. And I appreciate you coming on to share that. So the final question, Mike, My rocket fuel law is to turn all setbacks, disappointments, screw ups, because not everything's something somebody does to you. It's sometimes we mess up, discouragement, all that toxicity. You store it in your fuel tank instead of your trunk where it weighs you down so you can convert it to fuel to blast off into outer space. What does that mean to you, and what has it meant to you in your life?
Well, I think you got to get rid of the toxicity. And I think you get rid of it by, talking to people like yourself who can be a mentor, be a coach, be a trainer, be a leader, be an example. When I have people in my life like you, C-Roc, who are a big example, uh, and I can say, man, if he can do it, I can do it. When I can be an example in somebody else's life, and they say, look at this guy, he spent 8 years in prison and started to build this company, and look what he's done in the short time he's been home. People can tap into that energy, right? I think we
Yeah.
create, guys like you and I create an energy that people can tap into, learn from, and grow from as a result of who we are, right? I talked about work ethic early on, right? And that's what I got from my dad growing up. Sounds like you got the same stuff from George, right? And we go and we carry that on to other people, but you got to get rid of the toxicity. And the way to get rid of that is to talk to somebody else. So engage a coach, engage a mentor, engage somebody that can help you do that.
Love it, man. Great answer. Great answer. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Mike. I appreciate it. And I look forward to doing more with you in the future. If there's anything I can ever help you with, man, just reach out. And, on Clubhouse, same thing, man. If I see you on Clubhouse, raise your hand on there. If I'm on stage, I'll bring you up. Would love to get your message out to more people. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
And you are going to be on my show here shortly. So
let's go. Are we already booked? Because I don't pay attention to the calendar ahead of time.
We're booked. I think we're booked
Okay.
for next week. So
all right, let's go. I'm ready to fire it up. Let's go. All right, guys, you've been listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast with your boy, the unstoppable Mike C-Roc. I want you to keep coming back, guys. I want you to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. If you like to watch these, go to Mike C-Roc Ciorrocco on YouTube. Check out. You can watch these episodes. And I look forward to engaging with you further and getting that rocket fuel book in your hands. So until next time, be unstoppable.